Did you know that one of the most significant political upheavals of the 20th century started with a simple tape recording smuggled into Iran? Let's dive into the Iranian Revolution. Iranian Revolution 1978-1979. Welcome back to Prospect Everything. Today we will be delving into a fascinating chapter of history, the Iranian Revolution. This monumental event fundamentally changed the course of Iran's destiny and continues to shape global politics even today. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video for more content like this. Iranian Revolution, popular uprising in Iran in 1978-1979 that resulted in the toppling of the monarchy on February 11, 1979 and led to the establishment of an Islamic Republic. The 1979 revolution, which brought together Iranians across many different social groups, has its roots in Iran's long history. These groups, which included clergy, landowners, intellectuals, and merchants, had previously come together in the Constitutional Revolution of 1905-1911. Efforts towards satisfactory reform were continually stifled, however, amid re-emerging social tensions as well as foreign intervention from Russia, the United Kingdom, and later the United States. The United Kingdom helped Reza Shah Pahlavi establish a monarchy in 1921. Along with Russia, the United Kingdom then pushed Reza Shah into exile in 1941, and his son Muhammad Reza Shah Pahlavi took the throne. In 1953, amid a power struggle between Muhammad Reza Shah and Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, the US Central Intelligence Agency and the UK Secret Intelligence Service orchestrated a coup against Mossadegh's government. Years later, Mohammad Reza Shah dismissed the parliament and launched the White Revolution, an aggressive modernization program that upended the wealth and influence of landowners and clerics, disrupted rural economies and led to the rapid urbanization and westernization, and prompted concerns over democracy and human rights. The program was economically successful, but the benefits were not distributed evenly, though the transformative effects on social norms and institutions were widely felt. Opposition to the Shah's policy was accentuated in the 1970s, when world monetary instability and fluctuations in Western oil consumption seriously threatened the country's economy, still directed in large part toward high-cost projects and programs. A decade of extraordinary economic growth, heavy government spending, and a boom in oil prices led to high rates of inflation and the stagnation of Iranians' buying power and standard of living. In addition to mounting economic difficulties, socio-political repression by the Shah's regime increased in the 1970s. Outlets for political participation were minimal, and opposition parties such as the National Front, a loose coalition of nationalists, clerics, and non-communist left-wing parties, and the pro-Soviet Tudeh masses party were marginalized or outlawed. Social and political protests were often met with censorship, surveillance or harassment, and illegal detention and torture were common. For the first time in more than half a century, the secular intellectuals, many of whom were fascinated by the populist appeal of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a former professor of philosophy in Qom, who had been exiled in 1964 after speaking out harshly against the Shah's recent reform program, abandoned their aim of reducing the authority and power of the Shi'i ulama, religious scholars, and argued that, with the help of the ulama, the Shah could be overthrown. In this environment, members of the National Front, the Tudeh Party, and their various splinter groups now joined the ulama in broad opposition to the Shah's regime. Khomeini continued to preach in exile about the evils of the Pahlavi regime, accusing the Shah of irreligion and subservience to foreign powers. Thousands of tapes and print copies of Khomeini's speeches were smuggled back into Iran during the 1970s, as an increasing number of unemployed and working poor Iranians, mostly new migrants from the countryside, who were disenchanted by the cultural vacuum of modern urban Iran, turned to the ulama for guidance. The Shah's dependence on the United States, his close ties with Israel, then engaged in extended hostilities with the overwhelmingly Muslim Arab states, and his regime's ill-considered economic policies served to fuel the potency of dissident rhetoric with the masses. Outwardly, with a swiftly expanding economy and a rapidly modernizing infrastructure, everything was going well in Iran. But in little more than a generation, Iran had changed from a traditional, conservative and a rural society to one that was industrial, modern and urban. The sense that in both agriculture and industry, too much had been attempted too soon, and that the government, either through corruption or incompetence, had failed to deliver all that was promised, was manifested in demonstrations against the regime in 1978. In January 1978, incensed by what they considered to be slanderous remarks made against Khomeini in Atalat, a Tehran newspaper, thousands of young madrasa religious school students took to the streets. They were followed by thousands of Iranian youth, mostly unemployed recent immigrants from the countryside, who began protesting the regime's excesses. The Shah, weakened by cancer and stunned by the sudden outpouring of hostility against him, vacillated between concession and repression, assuming the protests to be a part of an international conspiracy against him. Many people were killed by government forces in anti-regime protests, serving only to fuel the violence in a Shia country where martyrdom played a fundamental role in religious expression. Fatalities were followed by demonstrations to commemorate the customary 40-day milestone of mourning in Shia tradition, and further casualties occurred at those protests, mortality and protest propelling one another forward. Thus, in spite of all government efforts, a cycle of violence began in which each death fueled further protest, and all protest from the secular left and religious right was subsumed under the cloak of Shia Islam and crowned by the revolutionary rallying cry, Allahu Akbar, God is great, which could be heard at protests and which issued from the rooftops in the evening. The violence and disorder continued to escalate. On September 8, the regime imposed martial law, and troops opened fire against demonstrations in Tehran, killing dozens or hundreds. Weeks later, government workers began to strike. On October 31st, oil workers also went on strike, bringing the oil industry to a halt. Demonstrations continued to grow. On December 10, hundreds of thousands of protesters took the streets in Tehran alone. During his exile, Khomeini coordinated the upsurge of opposition, first from Iraq and after 1978 from France, demanding the Shah's abdication. In January 1979, in what was officially described as a vacation, the Shah and his family fled Iran. The Regency Council established to run the country during the Shah's absence proved unable to function, and Prime Minister Shahpur Bakhtiar, hastily appointed by the Shah before his departure, was incapable of effecting compromise with either his former National Front colleagues or Khomeini. Crowds in excess of 1 million demonstrated in Tehran, proving the wide appeal of Khomeini, who arrived in Iran amid wild rejoicing on February 1. 10 days later, on February 11, Iran's armed forces declared their neutrality, effectively ousting the Shah's regime. Bakhtiar went into hiding, eventually to find exile in France. On April 1st, following overwhelming support in a national referendum, Khomeini declared Iran an Islamic Republic. Elements within the clergy promptly moved to exclude their former left wing, nationalist and intellectual allies from any position of power in the new regime, and a return to conservative social values was enforced. The Family Protection Act 1967, significantly amended in 1975, which provided further guarantees and rights to women in marriage, was declared void, and mosque-based revolutionary bands known as comites, Persian committees, patrolled the streets enforcing Islamic codes of dress and behavior and dispatching impromptu justice to perceived enemies of the revolution. Throughout most of 1979, the Revolutionary Guards, then an informal religious militia formed by Khomeini to forestall another CIA-backed coup as in the days of Mossadegh, engaged in similar activity, aimed at intimidating and repressing political groups not under the control of the ruling Revolutionary Council and its sister Islamic Republican Party, both clerical organizations loyal to Khomeini. The violence and brutality often exceeded that which had taken place under the Shah. The militias and the clerics they supported made every effort to suppress Western cultural influence, and, facing persecution and violence, many of the Western-educated elite fled the country. This anti-Western sentiment eventually manifested itself in the November 1979 seizure of 66 hostages at the US Embassy by a group of Iranian protesters demanding the extradition of the Shah, who at that time was undergoing medical treatment in the United States. Through the embassy takeover, Khomeini's supporter could claim to be as anti-imperialist as the political left. This ultimately gave them the ability to suppress most of the regime's left-wing and moderate opponents. The Assembly of Experts, Majlis-e-Khobrega, overwhelmingly dominated by clergy, put a new constitution to referendum the following month, and it was overwhelmingly approved. The new constitution created a religious government based on Khomeini's vision of Vilayat-e-Faqih, Persian governance of the jurist, and gave sweeping powers to the Rehbar, or leader. The first Rehbar was Khomeini himself. Moderates such as Provisional Prime Minister Mehdi Bazargan and the Republic's first president, Abdul Hassan Bani Sadr, who opposed holding the hostages, were steadily forced from power by conservatives within the government, who questioned their revolutionary zeal. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution created a seismic shift in the political landscape of Iran. It was a period of social and political upheaval that ultimately led to the overthrow of the Pahlavi dynasty and the establishment of an Islamic Republic. The revolution was led by a diverse coalition of forces, including students, intellectuals, and religious leaders, who opposed the authoritarian rule of the Shah. The revolution was a response to decades of repressive and corrupt governance, as well as the Shah's close ties to Western powers. And that wraps up our exploration of the Iranian Revolution. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.